Georgia versus Florida in the world's largest outdoor tailgate. One of the few places where I'm like kind of okay with this being a neutral site game. I would still rather see like a game like this being played in Gainesville, right, or Athens.
Could you
Like 100
imagine?
like
Could you imagine?
this game being played in Gainesville would be crazy. But at the same time, I'll let it slide. If it were up to me, I would not have it a neutral site game, but I'll let it slide. This is a 14.5 point spread. Georgia is what 1-6 against the spread, 1-7. They have not been that good. Now Florida, guess who has been playing well all year? His name is Graham
Graham
Mertz.
motherfucking Mertz, man.
Wild. That's Wisconsin downgraded at quarterback when they got him out of there.
Which is crazy. And Florida said in the transfer market, they're like, we wanted one quarterback, and it was Graham Mertz. And other than Shador Sanders, who had no chance of going anywhere else, like what other transfer quarterback? Yeah. What other transfer quarterback has been a hit? Devin Leary? No.
Because guess what? We were like, well, why didn't you go after Devin Leary? Why didn't you go after Sam Hartman? Why didn't you go after, or when Grayson McCall was in the
Brennan Armstrong, Phil Jurkovich?
Like so many guys, we were like, oh yeah, like how did you sell on Graham Mertz? Guess who was wrong? Us. And I'm sure a lot of other people were too. So this is kind of a crazy game. I mean, I think Florida has a chance. Is that crazy to say? I think Florida has a chance.
I think 2 weeks ago I would have said no. I think after that Kentucky lost, Florida, got their act together against Vanderbilt and South Carolina, but also Georgia. Like the elephant in the room here is no Brock Bowers. Right, we haven't really seen Georgia be really tested after Brock Bowers. I mean, they slept walk through Vanderbilt, and now they're playing Florida, right? And this is a really, really interesting game. I'll give you my pick real quick. I'm going to go Georgia to win, just because I don't feel good enough about Florida at a neutral site to take them to win that much. But I will take Florida to cover. I do think 14.5 is a lot in a rivalry game. I do think Graham Mertz might make some plays, but also like, for Georgia, the key to victory here is, yes, no Brock Bowers. You'd like to see some of the wide receivers step up, but that running game has to get going. Hopefully your backs are getting more and more healthy as the year's going on.
Kendall Milton is back, and he played well.
Georgia has actually been running the ball really, really efficiently. Their offense, in large part, has been fantastic, outside of maybe a quarter or two against Auburn. But no Brock Bowers obviously changed that. But you saw Kentucky run all over Florida, right? And I think you have to look at that and be like, we can do that too, and hopefully continue to do that. But I do think Florida and Billy Napier really, really want to win this game. I think they really believe they can win this game. Yes. And this would be massive, massive implications.
Dude,
Florida to win this game.
Recruiting wise, if Florida wins this game, it would be ballistic.
Well, I'll give you another part. Florida would control their own destiny if they win this football game in terms of the SEC East. Now, yes, they still have at LSU and at Missouri, and then just for kickers and out of conference, they got to finish off with Florida State. But talk about momentum in year 2 for Billy Napier would be awesome to see for them.
Yeah, I'll say this about, look, depending on where your bar is at for like elite quarterback play, like you can make the argument that Carson Beck has been an elite quarterback this year. Now, a large part of that is because of Brock Bowers. I think, though, if Carson Beck continues to ball out the way that he is, even without Brock Bowers, he should be a high consideration for the Heisman Trophy. High consideration. This offense has been operating at as high level as it is, which, by the way, it is operating at a very high level. And people, I don't think, are really looking at it like this because it looks different. It's not Todd Monken's offense, right? It's not maybe as explosive as it was, but like it is operating at an insanely high level, and it's because of Carson Beck. He's so good. It honestly is a quarterback duel today, but I do agree if Georgia's able to run the ball the way Kentucky was able to run the ball against Florida. In fact, just in the past couple games, Florida's been giving up some gashes for sure in the run game. I think Georgia could take advantage of that. And Kendall Milton has been playing really well since he's come back. I think the run game has gotten a huge boost with just him coming back. So I'll take Georgia to win as well, but I'll also take Florida to cover. I think in a rivalry game, laying 2 touchdowns and a hook, the hook was what did it for me, baby.
Yeah, I agree. I do think the matchup to watch here is going to be Ricky Pearsall against a really talented Georgia secondary. I think, and Graham Mertz, right? I think we saw the last time we saw him play, he diced up South Carolina. Now, who hasn't diced up South Carolina yet, but he still did it. 423 yards and 3 touchdowns, no picks is incredibly impressive on the road in the SEC, right? I do think, like you mentioned it, Carson Beck's got a chance to vault himself into Heisman contenders. Both these teams, their toughest stretch of their schedule is starting now. It's starting this weekend and the rest of November, right? Georgia has, we mentioned they're playing Florida. They still have Missouri and at Tennessee. And then they host Mississippi in the middle of that from the SEC West. Like this is prime spot for everyone who's the Georgia naysayers, for Georgia to prove them wrong, be like, no, we're legit this year. We just turn on when we want to. And Carson Beck becomes a Heisman contender and implications for, a top 60 pick in the NFL draft. Graham Mertz can do the same thing. Him and Billy Napier can really cement themselves as, hey, we're for real here. And Florida, it's not just recruiting success. It's not just that. It's actually on the field. Right? This Florida team, I believe, is a much different football team than we saw week 1 against Utah. Right? Utah does that to a lot of people, right? That defense, especially when they were pretty healthy defensively in week 1. And now Florida kind of is getting their act together. That's been playing well, especially at home. And yes, it's neutral site, but they're still going to have 50% of the stadium is going to be Florida for sure, which will help them.